Him, therefore, has Jehovah appointed in the end of the world, because it was impossible that the evils of men could be removed by any other, provided that the nature of the human race were to remain entire, that is, the liberty of the will being preserved. This condition, therefore, being preserved inviolate, he came to invite to his kingdom all righteous ones, and those who have been desirous to please him. For these he has prepared unspeakable good things, and the heavenly city Jerusalem, which shall shine above the brightness of the sun, for the habitation of the saints. But the unrighteous, and the wicked, and those who have despised Jehovah, and have devoted the life given them to diverse wickednesses, and have given to the practice of evil the time which was given them for the work of righteousness, he shall hand over to fitting and condign vengeance. But the rest of the things which shall then be done, it is neither in the power of angels nor of men to tell or to describe. This only it is enough for us to know, that Jehovah shall confer upon the good an eternal possession of good things. When he had thus spoken, I answered, If those shall enjoy the kingdom of Messiah, whom his coming shall find righteous, shall then those be wholly deprived of the kingdom who have died before his coming? Then Peter says, You compel me, O Clement, to touch upon things that are unspeakable. But so far as it is allowed to declare them, I shall not shrink from doing so. Know then that Messiah, who was from the beginning, and always was ever present with the pious, though secretly through all their generations, especially with those who waited for him, to whom he frequently appeared. But the time was not yet that there should be a resurrection of the bodies that were dissolved. But this seemed rather to be their reward from Jehovah, that whoever should be found righteous should remain longer in the body, or at least as is clearly related in the writings of the law concerning a certain righteous man, that Jehovah translated him. Genesis chapter 5 verse 24. In like manner others were dealt with who pleased his will, that, being translated to paradise, they should be kept for the kingdom. But as to those who have not been able completely to fulfill the rule of righteousness, but have had some remnants of evil in their flesh, their bodies are indeed dissolved, but their souls are kept in good and blessed abodes, that at the resurrection of the dead, when they shall recover their own bodies, purified even by the dissolution, they may obtain an eternal inheritance in proportion to their good deeds. And therefore blessed are all those who shall attain to the kingdom of Messiah. For not only shall they escape the pains of hell, but shall also remain incorruptible, and shall be the first to see Jehovah the Father, and shall obtain the rank of honor among the first in the presence of Jehovah. Wherefore there is not the least doubt concerning Messiah. And all the unbelieving Jews are stirred up with boundless rage against us, fearing lest haply he against whom they have sinned should be he. And their fear grows all the greater, because they know that as soon as they fixed him on the cross, the whole world showed sympathy with him, and that his body, although they guarded it with strict care, could nowhere be found, and that innumerable multitudes are attaching themselves to his faith. Whence they, together with the high priest Caiaphas, were compelled to send to us again and again, that an inquiry might be instituted concerning the truth of his name. And when they were constantly entreating that they might either learn or teach concerning Yeshua, whether he were the Messiah, it seemed good to us to go up into the temple, and in the presence of all the people to bear witness concerning him, and at the same time to charge the Jews with many foolish things which they were doing. For the people was now divided into many parties, ever since the days of John the Baptist. For when the rising of Messiah was at hand for the abolition of sacrifices and for the bestowal of the grace of baptism, the enemy, understanding from the predictions that the time was at hand, wrought various schisms among the people, that, if haply it might be possible to abolish the former sin, the latter fault might be incorrigible. The first schism, therefore, was that of those who were called Sadducees, which took their rise almost in the time of John. These, as more righteous than others, began to separate themselves from the assembly of the people and to deny the resurrection of the dead, Matthew chapter 22, verse 23, and to assert that by an argument of infidelity, saying that it was unworthy that Jehovah should be worshipped, as it were, under the promise of a reward. The first author of this opinion was Dositheus, the second was Simon. Another schism is that of the Samaritans, for they deny the resurrection of the dead, and assert that Jehovah is not to be worshipped in Jerusalem, but on Mount Gerizim. They indeed rightly, from the predictions of Moses, expect the one true prophet, but by the wickedness of Dositheus, they were hindered from believing that Yeshua is he whom they were expecting. The scribes also and Pharisees are led away into another schism, but these, being baptized by John, and holding the word of truth received from the tradition of Moses as the key of the kingdom of heaven, have hid it from the hearing of the people. Luke chapter 11, verse 52. Yes, some even of the disciples of John, who seemed to be great ones, have separated themselves from the people and proclaimed their own master as the Messiah. But all these schisms have been prepared, that by means of them the faith of Messiah and baptism might be hindered. However, as we were proceeding to say, when the high priest had often sent priests to ask us that we might discourse with one another concerning Yeshua, when it seemed a fit opportunity, and it pleased all the church, we went up to the temple, and standing on the steps together with our faithful brethren, the people kept perfect silence. And first, the high priest began to exhort the people that they should hear patiently and quietly, and at the same time witness and judge of those things that were to be spoken. Then, in the next place, exalting with many praises the rite or sacrifice which had been bestowed by Jehovah upon the human race for the remission of sins, he found fault with the baptism of our Yeshua, as having been recently brought in opposition to the sacrifices. But Matthew, meeting his propositions, showed clearly that whosoever shall not obtain the baptism of Yeshua shall not only be deprived of the kingdom of heaven, but shall not be without peril at the resurrection of the dead, even though he be fortified by the prerogative of a good life and an upright disposition. Having made these and such like statements, Matthew stopped. But the party of the Sadducees who deny the resurrection of the dead were in a rage, so that one of them cried out from among the people, saying that those greatly err who think that the dead ever arise. In opposition to him, Andrew, my brother, answering, declared that it is not an error but the surest matter of faith, that the dead rise in accordance with the teaching of him of whom Moses foretold that he should come the true prophet. Or if, says he, you do not think that this is he whom Moses foretold, let this first be inquired into, so that when this is clearly proved to be he, there may be no further doubt concerning the things which he taught. These, and many such like things, Andrew proclaimed, and then stopped. And behold, one of the scribes, shouting out from the midst of the people, says, "The signs and miracles which your Yeshua the Messiah wrought, he wrought not as a prophet, but as a magician." Him Philip eagerly encounters, showing that by this argument he accused Moses also. For when Moses wrought signs and miracles in Egypt, in like manner as Yeshua also did in Judea, it cannot be doubted that what was said of Yeshua might as well be said of Moses. Having made these and such like protestations, Philip was silent. Then a certain Pharisee, hearing this, chid Philip because he put Yeshua on a level with Moses. To whom Bartholomew, answering, boldly declared that we do not only say that Yeshua was equal to Moses, but that he was greater than he, because Moses was indeed a prophet, as Yeshua was also, but that Moses was not the Messiah, as Yeshua was, and therefore he is doubtless greater who is both a prophet and the Messiah than he who is only a prophet. After following out this train of argument, he stopped. After him, James the son of Alphaeus gave an address to the people, with the view of showing that we are not to believe in Yeshua, on the ground that the prophets foretold concerning him, but rather that we are to believe the prophets, that they were really prophets, because the Messiah bears testimony to them. For it is the presence and coming of Messiah that show that they are truly prophets. For testimony must be borne by the superior to his inferiors, not by the inferiors to their superior. After these and many similar statements, James also was silent. After him Lebbaeus began vehemently to charge it upon the people that they did not believe in Yeshua, who had done them so much good by teaching them the things that are of Jehovah, by comforting the afflicted, healing the sick, relieving the poor. Yet for all these benefits their return had been hatred and death. When he had declared these and many more such things to the people, he ceased. And behold, one of the disciples of John asserted that John was the Messiah, and not Yeshua, inasmuch as Yeshua himself declared that John was greater than all men and all prophets. If then, said he be greater than all, he must be held to be greater than Moses, and than Yeshua himself. But if he be the greatest of all, then must he be the Messiah. To this, Simon the Canaanite, answering, asserted that John was indeed greater than all the prophets, and all who are born of women, yet that he is not greater than the Son of Man. Accordingly, Yeshua is also the Messiah, whereas John is only a prophet, and there is as much difference between him and Yeshua as between the forerunner and him whose forerunner he is, or as between him who gives the law and him who keeps the law. Having made these and similar statements, the Canaanite also was silent. After him Barnabas, who also is called Matthias, who was substituted as an apostle in the place of Judas, began to exhort the people that they should not regard Yeshua with hatred, nor speak evil of him. For it were far more proper, even for one who might be in ignorance or in doubt concerning Yeshua, to love than to hate him. For Jehovah has affixed a reward to love, a penalty to hatred. For the very fact, said he, that he assumed a Jewish body and was born among the Jews, how has not this incited us all to love him? When he had spoken this, and more to the same effect, he stopped. Then Caiaphas attempted to impugn the doctrine of Yeshua, saying that he spoke vain things, for he said that the poor are blessed, and promised earthly rewards, and placed the chief gift in an earthly inheritance, and promised that those who maintain righteousness shall be satisfied with meat and drink. And many things of this sort he is charged with teaching. Thomas, in reply, proves that his accusation is frivolous, showing that the prophets in whom Caiaphas believes taught these things much more, and did not show in what manner these things are to be, or how they are to be understood, whereas Yeshua pointed out how they are to be taken. And when he had spoken these things, and others of like kind, Thomas also held his peace. Therefore Caiaphas, again looking at me, and sometimes in the way of warning, and sometimes in that of accusation, said that I ought for the future to refrain from preaching Yeshua the Messiah, lest I should do it to my own destruction, and lest, being deceived myself, I should also deceive others. Then moreover he charged me with presumption, because though I was unlearned, a fisherman, and a rustic, I dared to assume the office of a teacher. As he spoke these things, and many more of like kind, I said in reply that I incurred less danger, if, as he said, this Yeshua were not the Messiah, because I received him as a teacher of the law, but that he was in terrible danger if this be the very Messiah, as assuredly he is, for I believe in him who has appeared. But for whom else, who has never appeared, does he reserve his faith? But if I, an unlearned and uneducated man, as you say, a fisherman and a rustic, have more understanding than wise elders, this, said I, ought the more to strike terror into you. For if I disputed with any learning, and won over you wise and learned men, it would appear that I had acquired this power by long learning, and not by the grace of divine power. But now, when, as I have said, we unskilled men convince and overcome you wise men, who that has any sense does not perceive that this is not a work of human subtlety but of divine will and gift. Thus we argued and bore witness. and we who were unlearned men and fishermen taught the priests concerning the one only God of heaven, the Sadducees concerning the resurrection of the dead, the Samaritans concerning the sacredness of Jerusalem. Not that we entered into their cities, but disputed with them in public. The scribes and Pharisees concerning the kingdom of heaven, the disciples of John, that they should not suffer John to be a stumbling block to them, and all the people, that Yeshua is the eternal Messiah. At last, however, I warned them, that before we should go forth to the Gentiles, to preach to them the knowledge of Jehovah the Father, they should themselves be reconciled to Jehovah, receiving his Son. For I showed them that in no way else could they be saved, unless through the grace of the Holy Spirit they hasted to be washed with the baptism of threefold invocation, and received the Eucharist of Messiah the Lord, whom alone they ought to believe concerning those things which he taught, that so they might merit to attain eternal salvation. But that otherwise it was utterly impossible for them to be reconciled to Jehovah, even if they should kindle 1,000 altars and 1,000 high altars to him. For we, said I, have ascertained beyond doubt that Jehovah is much rather displeased with the sacrifices which you offer, the time of sacrifices having now passed away, and because you will not acknowledge that the time for offering victims is now past. Therefore the temple shall be destroyed, and the abomination of desolation shall stand in the holy place. And then the gospel shall be preached to the Gentiles for a testimony against you, that your unbelief may be judged by their faith. For the whole world at different times suffers under various maladies, either spreading generally over all or affecting specially. Therefore it needs a physician to visit it for its salvation. We therefore bear witness to you, and declare to you what has been hidden from every one of you. It is for you to consider what is for your advantage. When I had thus spoken, the whole multitude of the priests were in a rage, because I had foretold to them the overthrow of the temple. Which when Gamaliel, a chief of the people, saw, who was secretly our brother in the faith, but by our advice remained among them, because they were greatly enraged and moved with intense fury against us, he stood up and said, Be quiet for a little, O men of Israel, for you do not perceive the trial which hangs over you. Wherefore refrain from these men, and if what they are engaged in be of human counsel, it will soon come to an end. But if it be from Jehovah, why will you sin without cause and prevail nothing? For who can overpower the will of Jehovah? Now therefore, since the day is declining towards evening, I shall myself dispute with these men tomorrow, in this same place in your hearing, so that I may openly oppose and clearly confute every error. By this speech of his their fury was to some extent checked, especially in the hope that next day we should be publicly convicted of error. And so he dismissed the people peacefully. Now when we had come to our James, while we detailed to him all that had been said and done, we supped and remained with him, spending the whole night in supplication to Almighty Jehovah, that the discourse of the approaching disputation might show the unquestionable truth of our faith. Therefore, on the following day, James the bishop went up to the temple with us and with the whole church. There we found a great multitude, who had been waiting for us from the middle of the night. Therefore we took our stand in the same place as before, in order that, standing on an elevation, we might be seen by all the people. Then, when profound silence was obtained, Gamaliel, who, as we have said, was of our faith, but who by a dispensation remained among them, that if at any time they should attempt anything unjust or wicked against us, he might either check them by skillfully adopted counsel, or might warn us, that we might either be on our guard, or might turn it aside. He therefore, as if acting against us, first of all looking to James the bishop, addressed him in this manner, If I, Gamaliel, deem it no reproach, either to my learning or to my old age, to learn something from babes and unlearned ones, if haply there be anything which it is for profit or for safety to acquire. For he who lives reasonably knows that nothing is more precious than the soul, Ought not this to be the object of love and desire to all, to learn what they do not know, and to teach what they have learned? For it is most certain that neither friendship, nor kindred, nor lofty power ought to be more precious to men than truth. Therefore you, O brethren, if you know anything more, shrink not from laying it before the people of Jehovah who are present, and also before your brethren, while the whole people shall willingly and in perfect quietness hear what you say. For why should not the people do this, when they see even me equally with themselves willing to learn from you, if haply Jehovah has revealed something further to you? But if you in anything are deficient, be not ye ashamed in like manner to be taught by us, that Jehovah may fill up whatever is wanting on either side. But if any fear now agitates you on account of some of our people whose minds are prejudiced against you, and if through fear of their violence you dare not openly speak your sentiments, in order that I may deliver you from this fear, I openly swear to you by Almighty Jehovah, who lives forever, that I will suffer no one to lay hands upon you. Since then you have all this people witnesses of this my oath, and you hold the covenant of our sacrament as a fitting pledge, let each one of you, without any hesitation, declare what he has learned. And let us, brethren, listen eagerly and in silence. These sayings of Gamaliel did not much please Caiaphas, and holding him in suspicion as it seemed, he began to insinuate himself cunningly into the discussions. For, smiling at what Gamaliel had said, the chief of the priests asked of James, the chief of the bishops, that the discourse concerning Messiah should not be drawn but from the Scriptures, that we may know, said he, whether Yeshua be the very Messiah or no. Then said James, we must first inquire from what Scriptures we are especially to derive our discussion. Then he, with difficulty, at length overcome by reason, answered that it must be derived from the law, and afterwards he made mention also of the prophets. To him our James began to show that whatsoever things the prophets say, they have taken from the law, and what they have spoken is in accordance with the law. He also made some statements respecting the books of the kings, in what way and when and by whom they were written, and how they ought to be used. And when he had discussed most fully concerning the law, and had, by a most clear exposition, brought into light whatever things are in it concerning Messiah, he showed by most abundant proofs that Yeshua is the Messiah, and that in him are fulfilled all the prophecies which related to his humble advent, for he showed that 2 advents of him are foretold, one in humiliation, which he has accomplished, the other in glory, which is hoped for to be accomplished, when he shall come to give the kingdom to those who believe in him, and who observe all things which he has commanded. And when he had plainly taught the people concerning these things, he added this also, that unless a man be baptized in water, in the name of the threefold blessedness, as the true prophet taught, he can neither receive remission of sins nor enter into the kingdom of heaven. And he declared that this is the prescription of the unbegotten God, to which he added this also, do not think that we speak of 2 unbegotten gods, or that one is divided into 2, or that the same is made male and female. But we speak of the only begotten Son of Jehovah, not sprung from another source, but ineffably self-originated, and in like manner we speak of the Paraclete. But when he had spoken some things also concerning baptism, through 7 successive days he persuaded all the people and the high priest that they should hasten straightway to receive baptism. And when matters were at that point that they should come and be baptized, some one of our enemies, entering the temple with a few men, began to cry out and to say, what mean ye, O men of Israel? Why are you so easily hurried on? Why are you led headlong by most miserable men, who are deceived by Simon, a magician? While he was thus speaking, and adding more to the same effect, and while James the bishop was refuting him, he began to excite the people and to raise a tumult, so that the people might not be able to hear what was said. Therefore he began to drive all into confusion with shouting, and to undo what had been arranged with much labor, and at the same time to reproach the priests, and to enrage them with revilings and abuse, and like a madman to excite everyone to murder, saying, what are you doing? Why do you hesitate? O sluggish and inert, why do we not lay hands upon them, and pull all these fellows to pieces? When he had said this, he first, seizing a strong brand from the altar, set the example of smiting. Then others also, seeing him, were carried away with like readiness. Then ensued a tumult on either side, of the beating and the beaten. Much blood is shed. There is a confused flight, in the midst of which that enemy attacked James, and threw him headlong from the top of the steps. And supposing him to be dead, he cared not to inflict further violence upon him. But our friends lifted him up, for they were both more numerous and more powerful than the others. But from their fear of Jehovah, they rather suffered themselves to be killed by an inferior force than they would kill others. But when the evening came, the priests shut up the temple, and we returned to the house of James, and spent the night there in prayer. Then before daylight we went down to Jericho, to the number of 5,000 men. Then after 3 days, one of the brethren came to us from Gamaliel, whom we mentioned before, bringing to us secret tidings that that enemy had received a commission from Caiaphas, the chief priest, that he should arrest all who believed in Yeshua, and should go to Damascus with his letters, and that there also, employing the help of the unbelievers, he should make havoc among the faithful, and that he was hastening to Damascus chiefly on this account, because he believed that Peter had fled there. And about 30 days thereafter, he stopped on his way while passing through Jericho, going to Damascus. At that time we were absent, having gone out to the sepulchres of 2 brethren, which were whitened of themselves every year, by which miracle the fury of many against us was restrained, because they saw that our brethren were had in remembrance before Jehovah. While therefore we abode in Jericho and gave ourselves to prayer and fasting, James the bishop sent for me, and sent me here to Caesarea, saying that Zacchaeus had written to him from Caesarea, that one Simon, a Samaritan magician, was subverting many of our people, asserting that he was one stands, that is, in other words, the Messiah, and the great power of the high Jehovah, which is superior to the Creator of the world. At the same time that he showed many miracles, and made some doubt, and others fall away to him. He informed me of all things that had been ascertained respecting this man from those who had formerly been either his associates or his disciples, and had afterwards been converted to Zacchaeus. Many therefore there are, O Peter, said James, for whose safety's sake it behooves you to go and to refute the magician, and to teach the word of truth. Therefore make no delay, nor let it grieve you that you set out alone, knowing that Jehovah by Yeshua will go with you, and will help you, and that soon, by his grace, you will have many associates and sympathizers. Now be sure that you send me in writing every year an account of your sayings and doings, and especially at the end of every 7 years. With these expressions he dismissed me, and in 6 days I arrived at Caesarea. When I entered the city, our most beloved brother Zacchaeus met me, and embracing me brought me to this lodging, in which he himself stayed, inquiring of me concerning each of the brethren, especially concerning our honorable brother James. And when I told him that he was still lame on one foot, on his immediately asking the cause of this, I related to him all that I have now detailed to you, how we had been called by the priests and Caiaphas the high priest to the temple, and how James the archbishop, standing on the top of the steps, had for 7 successive days shown the whole people from the scriptures of the Lord that Yeshua is the Messiah, and how, when all were acquiescing that they should be baptized by him in the name of Yeshua, an enemy did all those things which I have already mentioned and which I need not repeat. When Zacchaeus had heard these things, he told me in return of the doings of Simon, and in the meantime Simon himself, how he heard of my arrival I do not know, sent a message to me saying, "Let us dispute tomorrow in the hearing of the people." To which I answered, "Be it so as it pleases you." And this promise of mine was known over the whole city, so that even you, who arrived on that very day, learned that I was to hold a discussion with Simon on the following day, and having found out my abode, according to the directions which you had received from Barnabas, came to me. But I so rejoiced at your coming that my mind, moved I know not how, hastened to expound all things quickly to you, yet especially that which is the main point in our faith, concerning the true prophet, which alone I doubt not is a sufficient foundation for the whole of our doctrine, Then, in the next place, I unfolded to you the more secret meaning of the written law, through its several heads, which there was occasion to unfold. Neither did I conceal from you the good things of the traditions. But what remains, beginning from tomorrow, you shall hear from day to day in connection with the questions which will be raised in the discussion with Simon, until by Jehovah's favor we reach that city of Rome, to which we believe that our journey is to be directed. I then declared that I owed him all thanks for what he had told me, and promised that I would most readily do all that he commanded. Then, having taken food, he ordered me to rest, and he also betook himself to rest.